What on earth are passive verbs? In this video, I'm going to look at what passive verbs are in Latin and how you can spot them to make your translations more easy. So first of all, what is a passive verb? Well, it's when the grammatical subject of a sentence receives the action. Usually in sentences, the grammatical subject does the action and the object receives the action. But when you use a passive verb, that switches and the grammatical subject instead is the person that's receiving the action. So for example, the girl was attacked by the dog. The subject of my sentence is the girl. But because I have this passive verb, it sounds like she is the object. In this case, she was attacked by the dog. So we have the grammatical subject, a passive verb, and an ablative of agent. That's the thing doing the passive verb. So let's have a look at how to spot them in Latin. There are two different ways to form a passive verb, and that depends on what tense you are using. 3 of them use the present stem and 3 of them use the perfect stem. So we're going to start with the present stem ones first. Those are the present passive, the imperfect passive, and the future passive. Now, all 3 of these tenses use the present stem of the verb. Then the imperfect and the future have their signifier to tell us which tense it is, and then you add these endings. Aris, ter, mer, mini, unter. For the imperfect, that changes to bar, baris, barter, barmer, barmini, banter. And for the future, that changes to bor, beris, bitter, bimmer, bimini, bunter. So let's have a look at some. Portor is my first person present passive, so I am carried a militibus by the soldiers. Laudabaris a militibus. Now laudabaris is no longer present, it is actually imperfect. So this is a second person singular, a you singular, imperfect verb. Laudo means praise, so this sentence means you were being praised by the soldiers. Last one of the present stem, necarbiter a militibus. Now necarbiter is a third person singular future passive. Neco means to kill, so necarbiter means he or she will be killed by the soldiers. So there are 3 examples of my present stems. Let's move on to our perfect stems. This is if you are looking for a perfect passive, a pluperfect passive, or a future perfect passive. The good thing is all 3 of those tenses have the word perfect in, so can help you to remember which ones need a perfect stem. This one is a little bit more complicated. You need the perfect passive participle of each of your verbs, plus the verb esse in various tenses based on which tense you need. So let's start with a perfect example. Portatus sum a militibus. This means I have been carried by the soldiers. In this, portatus is my perfect passive participle, and sum is my verb to be, my esse, in the present tense. So if I want a perfect passive, I use a present tense of the verb to be. Laudatae eratis a militibus. Laudatae eratis is my pluperfect passive. In this case, I've used the perfect passive participle, and this one is a feminine plural. I'm obviously talking about some women. And my eratis tells me who I am talking to. It is a second person plural. So laudate eratis means you had been praised. I'm talking to a group of women here, it sounds like. So you had been praised by the soldiers. I've used eratis because that is the imperfect of the verb to be. So I've got my perfect passive participle, laudate, my 4th principal part of laudo, and then I have my imperfect of the verb to be. That altogether makes the pluperfect passive. Finally, my future perfect passive, necati erunt a militibus. Again, I'm in a plural, so my perfect passive participle, necati, has a plural ending. I'm talking about a group of men this time. And erunt is my future of the verb to be. So this means they will have been killed, future perfect passive, by the soldiers. These passives can be quite tricky to get your head around, but just remember that if you see a perfect passive participle and the verb to be, it's probably going to be a normal passive verb. You just need to check what the verb means. So just a reminder, a passive verb is when a grammatical subject receives an action. They can take a little bit to get your head around, but I have videos on all of these on my channel. And if you want any extra help with Latin verbs, you can download my complete reference guide to Latin verbs from the link in the description below. It's got all the endings for active and passive verbs, as well as indicative and subjunctives. So have a look and see if that is something that will help you. I think it really will if you're getting into learning these endings. And that's passive verbs. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time on bambasbat.